Alright, I'm gonna make this quick video because I have not covered the NBA Cup at all. Well, I haven't made a video in 2 years, so I'm almost at the 1 year anniversary where I officially made my return to YouTube. So, shout out to you guys for coming along on my journey, and I'm grateful for again 200 of y'all that subscribed to me over the 5 years I've done this. Well, actually, 4.5 years, but I just want to get on here real quick and talk about the NBA Cup. First of all, overall a great game between the New York Knicks and the San Antonio Spurs. And then in truth, we saw a really great game on Saturday night between the San Antonio Spurs and the OKC Thunder. That was probably one of my favorite NBA games that I've watched this season because it genuinely felt like a playoff game. And let me cover that game before I actually talk about what I saw between the Spurs and the Knicks. I feel like that team, I said what I said about Denver and Houston being the teams to potentially beat OKC, but I do not want to count the Spurs team because of Victor Wembanyama. Victor had a freaking baby Chet Holmgren in that game on Saturday, bro. Like Chet couldn't do his usual moves that he does. Obviously, I don't want to be Shea's a foul bearer because Shea is still a great player. He wasn't getting his usual calls because I think the Spurs were playing really smart, disciplined defense by not reaching their hands into the cookie jar, and then J-Dub couldn't really get things going. So the Spurs executed a very sound game plan on how they feel like they can beat OKC. They played very disciplined defense enough to a point where Shea couldn't really get into his game. I'm not saying Shea's a foul baiter because Shea is going to get buckets, and he definitely got buckets that night. And then buckets by guys like Caruso, and I think it was Isaiah Hartenstein. But I feel like when you neutralize guys like Chet Holmgren and J-Dub, it puts a lot more onus on Shea. But the Spurs were still able to neutralize that OKC offense. And I definitely think that we are going to see a 7 game series, or at least I personally would love to see a 7 game series between San Antonio and Oklahoma City. The stalemate is at 1-1 in 2014. We all know the Spurs back then. They had Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, young Kawhi Leonard, Danny Green, Patty Mills, yada, yada, yada. On the other side, Oklahoma City had Kendrick Perkins, Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant, Reggie Jackson, Serge Ibaka, and Thabo Sefolosha. And then 2016, virtually the same matchup, except San Antonio had LaMarcus Aldridge at the time. And then Oklahoma City had Steven Adams, who was their premier big at the time, and then Andre Roberson, who was their premier defender at the time, next to Russ and KD. I would love to see that as a 7 game series. You know, Victor versus Chet, Shea versus Stephon Castle, J-Dub versus Devin Vassell. It's a really, really good matchup. And those two teams, low-key, match up really well with each other. You know what I'm saying? But enough about that. Now let's get to the actual game. I understand that Mitch Johnson wanted to put Wemby on a minutes restriction, which is why he only played 25 minutes tonight. Because remember, he is still fresh off a calf strain, and they're trying to monitor his minutes. And slowly, Mitch is starting to take the leash off of him. And I understand you don't want to prematurely put Victor in the starting lineup right away because, again, we saw what we saw with Tyrese Halliburton in the finals. He had a calf strain, he played through it, and unfortunately, he blew out his Achilles in Game 7 of the finals. I talked about that injury 100,000 times on this channel, and then Jason Tatum, Dame Lillard, DeJounte Murray, and then recently we saw what we saw with Najee Harris and Austin Eckler in football, and then Griffin Canning of the New York Mets in baseball. You guys get the story. I'm not going to try to reiterate all those injuries and what happened, but I see why Mitch wanted to put Victor on a minutes restriction because they are going to need him in the home stretch of the season. I get that. But even with that, the Spurs made a lot of questionable coaching decisions in this game. I mean, look, Mitch Robinson was killing the Spurs on the offensive glass. Same with Kolek. OG was getting some offensive rebounds himself, and Josh Hart was also being a defensive demon on the glass and an offensive rebounding demon like he always is. So it's just like, I don't know if it's a lack of fight from the Spurs or the fact that Luke Cornett is their only big guy that they're playing. I mean, I don't know why they're not going to guys like Kelly Olynyk or Bismack Biyombo, I should say. I know at the end of the day, you know, Bismack Biyombo is Bismack Biyombo, and I've said it on this channel before when he was on the Suns. But Biz can provide some size and rebounding and toughness down low. Pause. And same with Kelly too. I don't know why. If Here's the thing about Mitch, if you were so concerned about Victor potentially injuring himself, which wasn't the case because he looked good in tonight when he played, but I don't know. I really wasn't a fan of Mitch playing for a three guard lineup and then a small forward at the four, and then Luke Cornett is their only big guy because New York was able to take advantage of that and create so much mismatches on the perimeter. And then obviously the guys, I don't know, they played the Spurs played very lazy defense, especially when guarding the three. I saw OG Anunoby get wide open looks from the corner, and the Amazon crew talked about it in their pregame that OG is not only shooting a career high 41% from three this year, but I think they alluded to it earlier. OG is one of the best corner shooters in the NBA as of right now. Obviously, numbers are subjected to change. Obviously, it could change throughout the year. OG might not be the best while the season is ongoing, or when the season concludes, I should say. But even with that, I really wasn't a fan of the Spurs 3-point defense. There were a lot of possessions where guys were left wide open for three. One play that really made me scratch my head, it was during I think it was the first half. No, yeah, it was the first half. And OG, no, not OG. I don't know if it was off an offensive rebound, but I think Jalen Brunson was wide open at the top of the key, or maybe it was OG. I don't know. But for some reason, Victor left either of the two from the top of the key, thinking Julian Champagnie was going to switch on him, and Julian thought Wemby was gonna go out and contest the shot and possibly block it. So a lot of bad miscues, and then I don't know why they were doubling off of 3-point shooters. I love Mitch Johnson as a coach, and I think he's going to be a really good head coach in this league for a very long time. And I know he has a lot to learn as a head coach. And guys, this is his second year. This ain't like he's in his seventh year in the league and he's making these rookie mistakes. I know a lot of coaches that did that. The infamous Monty Williams debacle with the Detroit Pistons. Whole bunch of coaching mistakes back then. And Monty was a seasoned vet. So I'm giving Mitch a little grace because these are growing pains for a young team. But when it comes to high stakes games like this, you cannot play that type of defense, especially when you want to beat a team like OKC, when you want to beat a team like Denver, when you want to be a team like the Houston Rockets. Potentially, you could lose to the Lakers in the first round playing like that. You know what I'm saying? Because I think San Antonio and the Lakers are 4-5 right now. I believe that's our overall record. Let me go check the standings. But again, I really wasn't a fan of Mitch Johnson's strategy at all. Okay, never mind. The Lakers are number 3. San Antonio's number 4. But my point still stands. And then the thing about it too is that I really didn't like in the fourth quarter. Look, again, I understand Wemby's on a minutes restriction, but they sat him. Mitch and the coaching staff sat him out for a good 4 to 5 minutes. And granted, Champagnie played well, Stephon Castle played well, and Devin Vassell played okay and all that other stuff when those two were on the bench. But you needed those guys. You needed De'Aaron Fox and Victor Wembanyama out on the court, because when they put him back, or when they put those two back in with, I believe it was like around 5 minutes to go, like it was about to head to the under 5 minute mark, right? It took Victor and De'Aaron out of their games and out of their flow and rhythm, and you can tell that some of the shots they were shooting, you could tell that they were off. And obviously, I wasn't a fan of them just settling for threes when it mattered most. Because I think the only three that I remembered them hitting down the stretch, outside of that Dylan Harper 3, which obviously was a garbage time 3, essentially. But the only three I remember them hitting to keep the game closer, to give them a chance to win, was a Stephon Castle corner 3 in transition. So that was the only 3 that I remember them hitting. Other than that, they were jacking up threes for absolutely no reason. I understand the main philosophy in the NBA is just shoot threes are more than twos, which is a good strategy in the regular season, but you can ask the Celtics, ironically, Luke Cornett's former team, that you tried that strategy in the playoffs, it can only last you for so long, and eventually it's going to backfire, and it backfired on the Celtics last year against these Knicks, and then it backfired on San Antonio tonight. So a lot of bad coaching calls by Mitch Johnson, but a lot of undisciplined defense that I can say is more so on the players than it is Mitch, because again, you're allowing so many offensive rebounds, you're allowing so many open threes, which definitely made me scratch my head a lot. And again, Victor and Cornette were getting killed on the glass too. And again, I can't put too much on them because it is a bad coaching adjustment by Mitch Johnson, especially with keeping Cornette in as your only big guy when you could have played guys like Kelly Olynyk and Bismack Biyombo to take some pressure off of him because of the fact that he was so concerned about Wemby getting hurt. But let's go to the Knicks in this game. It actually kind of looked ugly for New York for a little bit. But I think where the game really turned is when Jordan Clarkson, as I alluded to, started hitting all those threes. I think he hit 3 threes in a row, which gave the Knicks a lot of momentum. And I can say this as a Laker fan, this is how Jordan has always played. Even when he was in Utah playing next to Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, I remember a game against the Clippers, I believe it was game 6, where Jordan went on a heater, and then once the Clippers figured him out, obviously we know what happened that night. But Jordan is capable of hitting shots like that, and he could definitely come off the bench to swing momentum in the Knicks' favor. And the one thing that I noticed in this game too, and this was mainly a ballsy coaching strategy by Mike Brown, which probably would not have happened with Tom Thibodeau, is that he went to his bench. Like I alluded to, Jordan Clarkson coming up clutch. Tyler Kolek was coming up with big defensive plays and big buckets. Mitch Robinson, like I alluded to, was killing the Spurs on the glass. And then Mikal Bridges barely saw the floor in the fourth quarter. If not, he didn't see the floor at all in the fourth quarter, which again is something that would never happen under Tom Thibodeau because Tibbs runs his starters into the ground. He's notorious for that, which ultimately got him fired because of the fact he overplayed his stars, which cost him in that Pacers series, especially games 1 and 2. You know what I mean? So, and I guess because Mikal was not shooting the ball great at all tonight, he was 4 of 12 from the field, 1 of 5 from 3. So I guess because of that, the fact that Jordan and Tyler and Mitch Robinson were kind of outplaying Mikal in their own sense, Mike Brown decided to stick with that lineup because that lineup was giving them a lot of momentum. And same with the play of OG Anunoby, which I alluded to multiple times. Josh Hart coming up big on the offensive glass. I don't think Karl Towns played in the fourth quarter. I think he did, from what I saw. But either way, Mike Brown made a very ballsy coaching decision, and it paid off, which I believe is something the Knicks needed in that Pacers series last year, which, in truth, Tibbs did make some ballsy coaching moves. But again, he played his starters more than they needed to instead of playing a lineup that gave him a lot of momentum. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. That was a very clever coaching move by Mike Brown, and you know what? He definitely earned his flowers with this game tonight. But again, the San Antonio Spurs, they have to go back to the drawing board after this because their leading rebounder, or leading rebounders, I should say, was Stephon Castle and Dylan Harper, each with 7. Vic Wembanyama and Luke Cornette each had 6. With how Wemby played to start off the year, which I was praising Victor for how he played against the Mavericks and how he played it early on in the season, he cannot be the third leading rebounder. I expect Victor to have 10 plus rebounds every night. You can't let Dylan Harper and Stephon Castle out rebound you as a 7'5" guy, a generational talent, bro. And I know Victor knows this as well. I am sure that he acknowledges that he has to play better because, again, Mitch Robinson was the leading rebounder in this game with 15. Karl Anthony Towns, 11 rebounds. OG, 9. Josh Hart with 8. So a lot of things went wrong the San Antonio Spurs way, but I cannot deny this. The Spurs showed a lot of fight. However, as a young team, and Mitch Johnson being a young head coach, they need to figure out how they can alleviate some of these problems down the stretch because it ain't going to be pretty all the time for sure. Ask OKC. It wasn't pretty for a couple years, but I'm just saying that these problems definitely need to be alleviated before the playoffs come because these type of things matter. You cannot play undisciplined defense and leave guys open for threes all the damn time. And the Spurs got out hustled by a New York team that wanted it more down the stretch. And you can tell New York wanted it more with every 50-50 ball they were chasing. Especially, we all know Josh Hart loves them 50-50 balls, bruh. Same with Mitch Robinson, Karl Anthony Towns. I can tell by the play and the hustle of guys like Jalen Brunson and Jordan Clarkson. You know, those type of things matter, while San Antonio didn't really want it that much. And I understand, you know, the cup might not matter at times, but sometimes when you're in these big stages, you get to showcase who you are. You know what I'm saying? We saw it with Indiana in 2023. A lot of people didn't know who Tyrese Halliburton was. A lot of people haven't heard the name Miles Turner in a long time. And then when they beat Boston in that NBA Cup game in December 2023, and then they ended up beating Milwaukee in Vegas and faced the Lakers, a lot of people were impressed with how the Pacers played in spite of them getting blown out. My point is that, but either way, San Antonio has a lot to figure out as the season goes on, and I'm sure this is going to be a learning curve for this young Spurs team, especially with the growth of guys like Stephon Castle and Victor Wembanyama. I'm sure they'll learn from this, and I'm sure they're going to bounce back better as the season goes on. But what do you guys think? What do you guys think of the NBA Cup? What do you guys think of the Spurs? Do you guys think the Knicks are the team to beat in the East this year? Whatever y'all thoughts are, please leave it in the comments below. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully y'all subscribe to my YouTube channel. I post a lot of NBA content and a lot of shorts that are some are related to basketball, others are not related to basketball, and all the other stuff. If you like fun content and enjoy talking basketball, please like and subscribe. Until my next video, that is the end of this video. I'm X. Deuces.